Hi, my name is Alora, and I chose Diana Gabaldon for my presentation. Diana Gabaldon is known for her Outlander series. It spans 9 books. Her last book, Go Tell the Beast That I Am Gone, was just recently released. She was also born on January 11th, 1952. Um, and she is one of my favorite authors that not too many people know about, so I figured she would be perfect for this presentation. As I mentioned, she is the author of the Outlander series. It does span 9 books, as you can see here to your right. I also have included some quotes from her first editor, uh, a website, and an entertainment column. My favorite quote, though, is this very first one under this stack of books. It says, "These books have to be word of mouth books because they're too weird to describe to anybody." And I have not met anyone that I can accurately describe this book to without getting a couple weird looks in return. Um, just because it does cross so many genres all at one time, and it does encompass a lot of information. It's science fiction, it's historical fiction, it's historical romance, it's historical just in general, historical fiction. It does span quite a few genres. So I think it's interesting that Entertainment Weekly especially touches on that, where they say a time hopping, continent spanning salmagundi of genres. It's kind of just a bowl of all different kinds of things. Um, and that makes it sound like a mess, but it is probably the best book series I have ever read. Um, Now for Miss Gabaldon herself. Like I did mention before in the first slide, she was born on January 11th, 1952, which she says in her own words is the coldest day of the year. She was born to English and American parents in Flagstaff, Arizona, where she does still reside. Um, but before being known for being the author of the Outlander series, she received a BS in zoology from Northern Arizona University, an MS in marine biology from Scripps Institution of Oceanography, and a PhD in quantitative behavioral ecology, which is basically animal behavior but with statistics. Um, she was also professor of environmental science for about 12 years at Arizona State. She didn't start working on the Outlander series until 1989, and the debut novel Outlander released in 1991. It did very quickly become a New York Times bestseller, um, and as I mentioned before, explaining the plot to someone who has never read these books can be quite difficult. So in order not to botch it, I figured I would let Miss Gabaldon explain them herself. Um, and so the long and short of it is in 1946, Claire Bouchon Random goes to the Scottish Highlands with her husband Frank. She's an ex-combat nurse. She's been in this is 1942, so we're talking World War II. Um, and he was also in the army as well. And they were separated for quite a while. They have finally been able to come back together, and they are now focusing on their second honeymoon. They're also thinking of starting a family, which is historically something that's been very difficult for Claire. They touch on that very slightly. Uh, and she decides that she's going to go and take a look at what's around her in Scotland, and she ends up at these standing stones. And she walks through one of the stones, and bam, she's back in 1743. The first person that she comes across is her husband's six-time great-grandfather, um, Black Jack Randall, who is unfortunately um, He works for the Redcoats, but he is also a horrible human, and I cannot stress that enough. He is just absolutely horrid. Um, and while she's trying to escape from him, she ends up getting captured by a gang of Highland Scots. And in that time, in order to kind of save herself from being handed over to this very evil man, she ends up having to marry James Fraser in a marriage of convenience. James Fraser is our main male character in the Outlander series. And she ends up trying to escape Castle Leoch, which is where these Highland Scots live. Uh, and it's just, like I said, it's very interesting to describe to somebody else. She does end up falling in love with James Fraser, the gentleman that she was forced to marry. Um, Along with the Outlander series, which is what she's known for, she also has worked on novellas. I believe the first novella takes place between the second and the third book, I believe. There's also a graphic novel, as well as coloring books, and even a Starz original series based on the books. She is a set consultant, so the books, uh, or I should say, the show follows the books pretty closely. Um, and that show stars Sam Heughan and Catriona Balfe as James Fraser and Claire Bouchon Randall. Now, as for the historical context in which she writes in two major points of history. She writes in 1945, and that genuinely gets revisited through flashbacks, especially after she disappears. You visit 1945 with her husband, Frank, who is trying to find her. He is not successful, obviously, or we would not have the series that we do. Um, and then she also writes in 1743. Now, I believe her impact on literature itself is because while it's a little ridiculous to say that these kinds of books didn't exist before her, I believe she kind of brought the idea of time travel and romance and science fiction to the forefront of mainstream media where it was genuinely consumed, instead of just kind of browsed upon. Um, Again, she does have some other contributions. Like I mentioned before, the graphic novel's title is The Exile. I do own the coloring book, and I own the first, second, and third seasons of Outlander itself. I do have a sample of the audiobook, or not the audiobook, sorry. It does also come in audiobook, and the audiobook is very good. But I did insert a picture of what the graphic novel does look like, and why I chose her. Diana Gabaldon's work kind of holds a special place in my heart. While I was in high school, I was about 18. Um, I was very close to an older gentleman who was almost like a father figure to me. And I didn't know it, but he kind of he ended up showing me the first episode of Outlander uh, while I was there with him and his wife, helping them sort through some things. He asked if I liked love stories, and I said, yeah, of course, I'm a girl, who doesn't? And so he said, do you like time travel? And I said, yeah, I love time travel. And then he showed me what I didn't know until after he had passed. Uh, that was the first episode of Outlander. So it's a little kind of piece of him that I get to carry around every new season that Outlander comes out. Um, I will forever hold Outlander in a space like no other in my own heart. Uh, just because it does mean a lot to me. It is the one connection I do have with him, and I do miss him terribly. He's been gone for about 6 years now. His wife also just passed away, so thank God they're together. But it's still a hard loss. It gets easier day by day. I do have a picture of him on my nightstand uh, that I keep, but that is why I chose Diana Gabaldon. And I did in some inserts here. Uh, you are able to click on these links and access them for the excerpts, but thank you for listening. And there is my works cited page. And that is it for my presentation. Thank you for listening.